If you hear crying coming from the apartment above you, don't assume it's human. I learned that far too late. My name is Daniel, and 2 months ago, I moved into an old brick apartment building on the outskirts of Ridgeway. It's the kind of place that was probably charming in the 1970s but now just feels tired. The carpeting in the hallways looks like it hasn't been replaced in decades, and every door has at least 3 layers of mismatched paint. I didn't mind. I wasn't looking for luxury. I was looking for someplace quiet. Quiet is exactly what the leasing agent promised. Maybe that should have been the first red flag, how eager she was for someone to finally take Unit 2B. But at the time, it felt like a new beginning. After the breakup with Emma, I needed distance, solitude, and somewhere cheap. The building was half empty, which only made it more appealing. I convinced myself that the silence would help me heal. The first night I moved in, I was unpacking around midnight when I heard something faint. Crying. Soft, muffled, like someone trying to avoid being heard. I paused and listened. It came from the apartment directly above mine, 3B. I assumed someone was going through their own issues. This place was old, the walls probably carried noise, but as I lay in bed that night, I realized the crying wasn't stopping. It came in waves, sobbing, sniffling, then silence, followed by a low, shaky wail. The kind of grief that doesn't sound new. More like something that had been happening for a long time. Around 2:47 a.m., I heard footsteps pacing fast across the floor above me. Then a heavy thud, like someone collapsed. I went upstairs to check. I knocked on 3B's door. No answer. But the crying stopped instantly. I stood there for a full minute, ear pressed to the door. Not a sound. The next morning, exhausted, I asked the leasing manager if I could file a noise complaint. She blinked at me like she didn't understand the question. "There's no active lease for 3B, she said. "It's been vacant for 8 months, I laughed, thinking she meant the unit next to mine. She didn't. When I insisted I'd heard someone crying, she grew uncomfortable and said, "You're probably hearing another tenant. These old buildings echo strangely." Then she quickly changed the subject, almost like she wanted me out of the office. That night, the crying returned. Louder. Closer. Sometimes sounding like it was right above my bed. I tried putting on headphones, didn't help. The crying cut through everything. By the end of the week, I barely slept more than an hour at a time. At work, I was jumpy and unfocused. My coworkers noticed. One asked if I was okay. I wanted to say no, but I didn't want to sound insane. The crying wasn't the only thing. I started hearing whispering. Faint. Too low to understand, sometimes. It said my name. One night, around 3:15 a.m., I heard slow, deliberate footsteps move across the ceiling until they were directly above my bedroom. Then they stopped. I stared up, heart pounding. The crying began again, but this time it sounded like the source was hanging upside down above me, face inches from the plaster. It was so close I could hear wet breaths. I went upstairs again in the morning, just to prove to myself that 3B was empty. The door, which had been shut tight every time before, was slightly cracked open. I swear it wasn't like that the night before. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was stale, cold. The entire apartment was empty, no furniture, no curtains, no signs of life. Dust covered every surface. But the carpet. There were dark, worn grooves in the floor. Perfect paths from the kitchen to the living room to the hallway, as if someone had walked those routes thousands of times without stopping. Some paths were so deep the carpet fibers had completely rubbed away, and right in the center of the living room was a circular track. A pacing loop. Someone, or something, had been walking in that circle for a very, very long time. As I examined the marks, the crying began again. Not faint. Not from another room. But close. Right behind me. I spun around, nothing. The hallway was empty. But the crying kept going, growing louder and louder, like someone was standing inches from the back of my head. I ran out and didn't go back. That night, desperate for answers, I set my phone to record the ceiling. I angled it perfectly toward the center, hit record, and tried to sleep. Around 2 a.m., I woke to another scream, a broken, jagged sound that didn't seem possible for a human throat. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. At first, nothing. Then the ceiling bulged. The plaster stretched, like something was pressing its face against it from the other side. A forehead. A nose. An open mouth frozen in a silent scream. Eyes sunken in shadow. I noticed something else too. In the corner of the ceiling was a small, square panel. A hatch I'd never seen before. It was open a crack. The idea that someone, or something, was crawling inside the floors above me made my skin crawl. But I needed answers. I couldn't keep living like this. The next evening, I dragged a chair under the hatch. I climbed slowly, heart pounding, and pushed the panel open. A wave of cold, rotten air spilled out. The crawlspace was narrow and long, stretching in both directions as far as my flashlight reached. I lifted the light higher and saw it. A mattress, filthy, stained, sunken in the middle like someone had been lying there for years. The beams above it were clawed with deep scratches. Long gouges from frantic fingernails. In the corner was garbage, water bottles, crumpled food wrappers, an old hoodie. Someone had been living up here. Recently. As I scanned the space, my flashlight passed over something. A human shape. A woman was crouched in the far corner, her body shivering violently. Her hair was a tangled mess, clinging to her face. Her skin was so pale it almost looked gray. She stared at me with wide, red-rimmed eyes. When she spoke, her voice broke. "You left me. Why did you leave me?" My breath caught in my throat. It was Emma, but she wasn't supposed to be here. I hadn't seen her in months. She should have been with her family across the state. The last time we spoke, she begged me not to leave her, but she hadn't known where I moved. At least, I thought she didn't. She stood slowly, bones cracking. "I missed you," she whispered. "So I found you. I didn't want to disturb you. I stayed quiet. I tried so hard not to cry. But sometimes it hurts too much." She stepped toward me. I had to stay close. "I didn't want you to replace me." Her voice became a low, wet growl. "You belong to me." I stumbled backward and nearly fell through the hatch. She lunged, her hands curling around the opening as she stared down at me through the gap. "If you loved me," she screamed, "you'd let me stay." I shoved the hatch closed with all my strength. Something crunched beneath it, bone or teeth. She shrieked, a sound so sharp it made my ears ring. I ran out of the apartment, down the stairs, outside into the cold night air. I called the police from the parking lot. They searched the crawlspace. They found nothing. No mattress. No garbage. No scratches. No woman. They said the dust up there was thick and untouched. Like no one had gone up there in years. They suggested I speak to a therapist. I considered moving out, but my savings were gone. I had nowhere else to go. I tried to convince myself I had a breakdown, that stress and sleep deprivation created hallucinations. But then the crying returned. Not from the ceiling above me, the building sealed the hatch. Maintenance even screwed it shut. Now I hear crying from inside the walls. Almost like something is crawling through the spaces between. Trying to find a way back to me. Trying to get out. And the worst part. Sometimes the crying stops and I hear whispering. A woman's voice. Emma's voice. I press my ear to the wall. Her breath rasps inches away. "I found you," she whispers. "I'm still here." Last night, she said something new. I found another way in. And as I'm recording this, I hear footsteps behind me. Inside the apartment. Right now. Getting closer. If someone hears this, I'm sorry. I should have left when I still had the chance. For more stories like this, please like and subscribe.